The sedan's emergency alarm chirped once when Andre Bennett's chest struck the hood. Cold rain burst from the metal into his face, and Officer Brett Calloway twisted his right arm high enough to turn pressure into a white flash behind his eyes. "Stop reaching. My hands are open." Andre kept his voice level. Both palms lay flat against the charcoal paint. He had not touched Calloway, had not run, had not even reached the credential wallet inside his field jacket. "Verify the fleet plate." Calloway drove his hip into Andre's lower back. "You were prowling around a police vehicle." It was an unmarked state sedan parked across from Mason Ridge Police Headquarters, exactly where the command office had instructed him to leave it. Through the rain, Andre could see the building's glass entrance and the blurred shapes of officers watching from inside. None of them moved. A younger patrolman named Luis Ortega stood several feet away with his radio raised. He looked from Andre's gray civilian jacket to the government plate, uncertainty tightening his face. "Run it," Andre told him. Calloway snatched the wireless earpiece from Andre's right ear. The sudden pull scraped skin along his collar. "You don't give orders here." The impact alarm had already sent its silent packet to the State Fleet desk. Vehicle identity, location, door status, and a force reading from the hood sensor. Andre knew the system well enough to understand what would happen next. He also knew it would take time for two communications centers to authenticate each other. Calloway forced Andre's arm another inch upward. Luis winced. "Brett, he's not fighting." "Then cuff him." Luis did not move. Every radio on the sidewalk emitted the same emergency tone. Static compressed the dispatcher's voice, but the words came through cleanly. "Mason Ridge units at headquarters. Stand down immediately. Command identity has been verified. Repeat, all personnel, stand down." Luis lowered his free hand and stepped back. An officer near the entrance did the same. Calloway stared at his radio as if obedience were something he could negotiate. Andre felt the grip loosen for half a second. "Release my arm." Calloway ripped his own earpiece free and let it fall into a puddle. Then he folded Andre's wrist toward his spine. Pain tore across Andre's shoulder. His knee struck the bumper, but he refused to collapse. Beyond the hood, a small red indicator above the exterior camera went dark. "Calloway!" Luis shouted. The order was stand down. He reached inside his coat. No, he didn't. The station doors opened. Lieutenant Helen Rourke strode into the rain without an umbrella, one hand held out toward Luis. "Nobody transmits another word," she said. Calloway finally released the pressure, leaving Andre bent against the car with his right arm hanging uselessly. Rourke studied Andre's face. Recognition arrived without surprise, which told him she had heard the verification before coming outside. "Colonel Bennett," she said quietly, "your officer ignored an authenticated stop order, and he reports that you reached for a weapon during a security detention." Her gaze shifted to Calloway, then to the dead camera indicator. "Until we establish what happened, this is a controlled scene." Andre straightened through the pain. "My command meeting begins upstairs in 9 minutes. Rourke looked past him at the sedan. "Officer Ortega, take custody of Colonel Bennett's phone. Seal the vehicle. No one leaves, and no one accesses the camera system without my authorization." Luis approached with an evidence pouch but stopped before touching Andre's phone. Rain ran from the brim of his cap. "Colonel, I need you to place it inside yourself." Andre appreciated the distinction. Luis had heard Rourke's order, yet he was refusing to create another unnecessary contact. Andre used his left hand to remove the phone. Its screen showed 3 missed messages from his daughter, Ari, beneath the secure fleet alert. He did not open them. "Document that it remained locked," Andre said. "Record the seal number and have a second officer witness it." Rourke's expression hardened. "This is my scene. Then protect its integrity." Luis read the number aloud, while an officer from the doorway signed his notebook. Andre watched the pouch close. 30 years in state policing had taught him that memory bent under pressure, but a clean procedure gave frightened people something solid to stand on. An ambulance rolled to the curb. The paramedic examined Andre's shoulder beneath the awning and recommended immediate transport. Andre could move his fingers, though the last two tingled. He told himself that meant the injury could wait. The paramedic warned him that delay could turn a manageable tear into months of weakness. Andre heard the warning and treated it like another obstacle on a crowded schedule. "I have a command review upstairs," he said. "You may have a torn tendon. I'll be evaluated after the meeting." Luis looked as if he wanted to object. Rourke did not. She was already speaking quietly to Calloway beside the station doors. Andre entered the headquarters with his right arm held close to his ribs. The lobby smelled of wet uniforms and floor cleaner. Officers who had watched from behind the glass found reasons to study their screens. Andre understood the reflex. Rank made people attentive after the danger had passed. It rarely made them brave while it was happening. Upstairs, representatives from 4 regional agencies waited around a conference table. Andre had driven from an overnight inspection of a rural state post, which explained the field jacket, unmarked sedan, and lack of an escort. He had come to review Mason Ridge's application for state staffing assistance. The city claimed that every officer under medical or disciplinary restriction had been assigned within approved limits. Andre took his seat without removing the damp jacket. A state analyst offered to postpone the session. "No," he said. "The review belongs to the public, not to my comfort." The sentence sounded responsible. It also sounded like every excuse he had given Ari when work displaced dinner, birthdays, and the student design exhibition she had asked him to attend that evening. He opened the staffing packet with his left hand. On the 3rd page, Brett Calloway appeared under Training Observer Non-Enforcement. Andre looked through the glass wall toward the floor below, where Calloway had just slammed him onto a car and attempted a search. Rourke entered several minutes later. "Colonel, given your involvement, I assume you'll recuse yourself from anything concerning Officer Calloway." "From deciding it, yes." Andre slid the packet toward the state analyst. "Not from preserving the original submission. Make a secured copy and assign a reviewer outside my chain of command." Rourke's jaw tightened. "That form doesn't reflect last-minute operational needs." "Then the duty log will explain the difference." His phone was downstairs, so Andre borrowed the conference room line to call Ari. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, why did the fleet office call me?" "A sensor activated." "I'm fine. That isn't what I asked." Andre looked at his hand. The 2 tingling fingers had become numb, and a tremor moved through his thumb. "I'll meet you at the exhibition," he said. When he ended the call, he reached for the next page and discovered that his right arm would no longer lift from the table. The state analyst called the paramedics back before Andre could object. They secured his arm against his body and guided him toward the elevator, while the regional representatives watched the meeting collapse around him. Rourke followed them into the hallway with a tablet. "Before you leave, I need a preliminary statement. You need to separate the involved officers, preserve their devices, and notify an outside investigator." Calloway was performing headquarters security. Andre glanced through the conference room glass at the staffing packet. "Your certified application identifies him as a non-enforcement training observer. Operational assignments change. Certified records should not." The elevator opened. Rourke remained in the hallway, but her attention had already shifted from Andre's injury to the document on the table. At the hospital, a nurse cut the wet sleeve from Andre's field jacket. His shoulder had swollen beneath the fabric, and the numbness had spread along the outside of his hand. He answered questions while a technician positioned him for imaging. Each attempt to rotate the joint produced a deep, tearing sensation. His borrowed charger brought his phone to life after Mason Ridge released it to a state professional standards investigator. The evidence seal was intact. Luis had written the time, location, and witness name in careful block letters across the label. Ari's messages waited beneath dozens of command notifications. The first reminded him that her exhibition opened at 6. The second asked whether he was driving safely in the storm. The third contained only 3 words: Please, call me. Andre started to type that he would arrive late. A hospital clock showed the exhibition had already begun. He erased the promise and wrote that he was being examined. Before Ari could answer, the professional standards investigator entered with a city incident notice. Mason Ridge submitted this as a criminal referral, she said. They're requesting independent review because of your rank. The notice accused Andre of prowling around a restricted police vehicle, refusing a lawful security command, reaching inside his jacket for an unidentified object, physically resisting restraint, and falsely invoking state command authority before dispatch verified him. Calloway also claimed Andre had attempted to open the sedan's rear door after being told to step away. Every allegation converted Calloway's escalating force into a response to something Andre had supposedly done first. Andre read the page twice. The rear door never opened. They say the vehicle is part of the scene. We cannot inspect its data until custody is transferred. Mason Ridge has my car? Rourke sealed it pending a warrant decision. That was how a false account acquired weight. First came the allegation, then custody of the object that could disprove it, then a procedural reason no one else could look. The investigator placed another document beside the referral. It was an amended staffing certification sent by Rourke less than 40 minutes after the incident. Calloway's assignment had changed from training observer non-enforcement to emergency headquarters security. A note said the reassignment had begun before Andre arrived. Can she amend a pending application? Andre asked. She can correct an error. Whether this was an error is now part of the review. Andre studied the digital signature. Rourke had not merely defended Calloway's decision. She had altered the administrative reason he possessed authority to make the stop. A short video began circulating before the doctor returned. It had been recorded through the lobby glass and started after Andre was already pinned. Rain blurred the picture, but his voice was clear. Verify the fleet plate. Release my arm. The clip ended just before dispatch issued the stand-down order. The accompanying caption called him an unidentified state official demanding special treatment. Ari called. Andre hesitated, then answered. I saw the video, she said. The crowded exhibition murmured behind her. Were you going to tell me someone hurt you? I didn't want you leaving your opening. You always decide what everyone else is allowed to carry. The doctor entered holding the first scan. Andre told Ari he would call back, hearing the distance his answer created. There is significant soft tissue damage, the doctor said. We need an MRI, and you are not using that arm. On Andre's phone, the city issued a second statement. It said Officer Calloway had followed security protocol and was cooperating fully. Colonel Bennett, it added, remained under independent review for his conduct during the encounter. Ari arrived while Andre was still staring at the city statement. She wore the black dress she had chosen for her exhibition, but one sleeve was streaked with charcoal, where she had wiped her hands before leaving. The sight of it told him how quickly she had abandoned a night she had spent a year preparing for. Let me see your shoulder, she said. They're handling it. That is not an answer. The MRI showed a torn section of Andre's right rotator cuff, inflammation around the joint, and nerve irritation consistent with the arm being forced sharply behind his back. The orthopedic specialist could not say from imaging alone who had applied the force. She could say that continuing the meeting after the injury had increased the swelling and likely worsened the tear. Ari stood beside the examination table as that consequence settled between them. You knew you needed the ambulance, she said. I believed the meeting could not wait. The meeting happened without you. My opening happened without you. Now your shoulder may not work because you needed everyone to believe you could keep standing. Andre had given orders during shootings, flood rescues, and funerals. He had no command language for the truth in his daughter's voice. The state superintendent called before dawn. Because Mason Ridge had submitted a criminal referral, Andre would be placed on temporary administrative status. He would keep his title and pay, but surrender operational command until an independent review determined whether he had interfered with a municipal officer. "This is not a judgment," the superintendent said. "It will look like one. Then do not make it worse by investigating your own case." Andre agreed. The decision was proper. It still felt like losing the use of a second arm. His deputy would assume the regional command, including the staffing review Andre had been injured while attending. Every decision now made without him would deepen the public impression that the state itself doubted his account. By morning, Calloway's union representative had issued a statement describing an experienced officer confronting an unidentified man beside a sensitive vehicle during severe weather. The statement said Calloway had perceived a reach toward the waist, used approved control techniques, and removed his earpiece only after it malfunctioned in the rain. It did not mention the repeated dispatch order. Rourke announced that the exterior camera had suffered a weather-related interruption. Mason Ridge retained Andre's sedan, while city attorneys sought authority to search it for the object Calloway claimed he had tried to retrieve. The public clip passed 500,000 views, stripped of everything before the restraint and after Andre demanded verification. Anonymous comments called him entitled, dangerous, and protected by rank. Others defended him only because he was a colonel, as though the same violence would have mattered less against a man without stars on his collar. Ari photographed the purple bruising spreading beneath his collarbone. "What are you doing?" Andre asked. "Preserving what they'll say never happened. Do not post it." Her face closed. "I wasn't going to." He realized he had mistaken protection for distrust again, but an orderly entered before he could repair it. The first useful contradiction arrived from the State Fleet Office. The sedan's cloud system had recorded a high-force impact against the hood before any rear door opened. Its door sensors showed every door remained closed throughout the encounter. Only the trunk had opened, and that occurred after Mason Ridge sealed the vehicle. The data disproved one line in Calloway's referral. It did not prove who caused the impact, what Andre's hands had done, or whether Calloway heard dispatch. City Council answered within an hour. Andre could have thrown himself against the hood while resisting, and a closed door did not mean he had not attempted to open it. The rebuttal was thin, but it was possible. Possible was often enough to keep a false story alive. Andre's state attorney brought him a preservation letter covering the dispatch recording, camera control records, staffing portal, use of force report system, and every version of Calloway's written account. Andre reviewed the categories without directing the investigation. "Add the city's original staffing application," he said, "not just the amended copy. Rourke will argue that you are using command knowledge to target her. Then record that the analyst, not I, found the discrepancy during a review scheduled before the incident." The attorney nodded. "Anything else?" Andre looked at Ari's photograph on her phone, then at his immobilized shoulder. He could no longer rely on rank, silence, or physical endurance to make the truth obvious. "Yes," he said. "Request an outside custodian for every system, and make the letter public once service is confirmed." That choice cost him the quiet institutional handling he had always preferred. It also meant Mason Ridge would know exactly which records could no longer safely disappear. 3 days later, Andre sat at his kitchen table, while Ari loosened the cap on a bottle of pain medication he could not open with one hand. His right arm rested in a rigid sling. The orthopedic specialist had scheduled surgery and warned that recovery would be measured in months, not weeks. Andre thanked Ari without pretending he could have managed alone. "That sounded difficult," she said. "It was overdue." The independent state investigator arrived with an encrypted player and written authentication from Tessa Ward, the regional dispatcher who had transmitted the stand-down order. Because the regional center served both state and municipal units, Mason Ridge could not alter its master recording or radio identification history. Andre listened without speaking. The recording began with the State Fleet desk reporting an emergency impact signal from his sedan. Ward verified the vehicle number, contacted the Mason Ridge duty desk, and received confirmation that Colonel Andre Bennett was expected at headquarters. A municipal supervisor authorized the command broadcast. Ward's voice then filled Andre's kitchen, exactly as it had filled the rainy street. Mason Ridge units at headquarters. Stand down immediately. Command identity has been verified. Luis acknowledged first. 7 seconds later, Calloway's assigned portable radio transmitted. I have one detained. Send a supervisor. The sentence did not contain the word copy, but it destroyed Calloway's claim that he had removed his earpiece before the broadcast and heard nothing afterward. His radio had received the message, and his voice had entered the same channel moments later. City Council offered a narrower defense. Calloway might have transmitted without understanding the order, and stand down could mean cease active force while maintaining a detention. The recording alone could not prove what he understood. It proves the order reached his equipment, Andre said. Nothing more. The investigator studied him. Most complainants would ask me to call that decisive. Then most complainants would give the defense an easy exaggeration to attack. That restraint changed something in her posture. She opened the next file. The use of force reporting system had preserved each submitted revision. Calloway's first version said Andre moved one hand toward his jacket. A later version described a rapid reach toward an object believed to be a weapon. The final version added the attempted opening of the rear door, despite the fleet data showing it never moved. Each change appeared after a separate development: identity verification, notice of the camera interruption, and confirmation that Mason Ridge intended to seek a warrant for the sedan. Editing a report is not automatically misconduct, the investigator said. No, but every change should come from new information, not a new weakness in the defense. Luis had provided a separate recorded interview, he said. Andre's palms remained visible until Calloway pulled one arm behind him. He also refused to endorse Calloway's supplemental statement that the weather made radio traffic unintelligible. His account did not prove every movement before he arrived, but it gave the investigators a neutral witness inside the department. The staffing packet supplied Calloway's reason to keep escalating. An attachment to his non-enforcement assignment referenced a conditional employment agreement following an earlier excessive force finding. Any new sustained force violation during the review period could trigger dismissal. Rourke's certification promised the state that Calloway would remain in observation and training duties. Calloway needed the stop to become lawful because admitting an unjustified assault could end his career. Rourke needed his assignment to appear authorized because exposure threatened the staffing grant and her command position. The investigator closed the player. Professional Standards is recommending that the impersonation and vehicle access allegations against you be closed. The resisting allegation remains open until the physical evidence is reviewed. It was the first formal retreat from the city's story. Andre felt no triumph. His command remained elsewhere. His shoulder still required surgery, and the public clip continued circulating without the dispatch order. Ari leaned against the counter after the investigator left. Are you going to tell people they cleared those accusations? The state can announce its own findings. That is not what I asked. Andre looked at the sling, then at the unopened exhibition catalog beside her purse. I was wrong to make you carry this from a distance. If you want to stand beside me when the statement is released, I want you there. Her expression softened, though it did not become forgiveness yet. That afternoon, the outside custodian received a response from the camera vendor. The exterior system had not lost power, suffered water intrusion, or crashed in the storm. It had stopped recording because an authorized administrator placed the cameras in privacy mode seconds after dispatch, ordered everyone to stand down. The camera vendor's packet reached the outside investigator the morning Andre entered surgery. By the time he woke, his right arm was fixed inside a heavier immobilizer. His throat burned from anesthesia, and Mason Ridge had already announced that an employee password might have been compromised. The vendor record was precise about what it could prove. A command-level account assigned to Helen Rourke had placed 2 exterior cameras in privacy mode from a department tablet shortly after the stand-down broadcast. The system recorded the account, tablet identifier, affected cameras, and duration. It did not record the face or hands of the person holding the device. Rourke's attorney said supervisors commonly shared tablets during emergencies. The weather explanation disappeared from the city's statement, replaced by a claim of uncertain user identity. Andre read the update from his hospital bed while Ari adjusted a pillow beneath his elbow. "They changed the defense again," she said, "because the first defense stopped working. Doesn't that prove they're lying? It proves they are adapting." He no longer mistook patience for passivity. Before the medication pulled him back to sleep, he approved a public statement limited to what the records established. 3 accusations had been closed. The dispatch order had reached Calloway's radio, and the camera interruption was caused by an administrative command rather than rain. He allowed Ari to stand beside him in the release photograph. The statement brought Robin Quaid to the outside investigator. Robin managed occupational risk for Mason Ridge. She had authored Calloway's restricted duty order after a prior force review found that he escalated physical control when verbal compliance took longer than he expected. The order allowed classroom observation, report training, and supervised administrative work. It prohibited enforcement contact with the public. 2 weeks before Andre's arrival, Rourke had requested permission to use Calloway for lobby security during staffing shortages. Robin denied the request in the restricted duty scheduling portal. The system automatically attached that denial to Calloway's profile. On the morning of the assault, Rourke entered a local assignment code labeled Emergency Headquarters Support. That code allowed a watch commander to fill a sudden post without waiting for risk office approval. It was intended for evacuations, building threats, or mass arrests. The software did not compare the temporary assignment against medical and disciplinary restrictions until a monthly audit. Rourke had found the space between permission and review. Robin could authenticate the order, the denial, and the meaning of the emergency code because they fell within her assigned responsibilities. She could not determine from those records why Calloway first approached Andre or what force he used. Her evidence connected Rourke to the authority that put him outside, not to every decision he made there. "Why come forward now?" the investigator asked, during the recorded interview Andre later received through counsel. Robin folded her hands on the table, because Colonel Bennett's preservation letter listed the original staffing application. If that record had not been named, the amended version would have replaced it during the normal grant review process. "I designed part of that process. I know exactly how invisible the substitution would have become." She also described what happened after the incident. Rourke asked her to approve the emergency assignment retroactively. Robin refused. Within an hour, her access to Calloway's personnel profile was suspended for what the city called conflict protection. The cooperation cost her more the following day. Mason Ridge placed Robin on paid leave and accused her of disclosing confidential employment information. The union identified her publicly as a disgruntled administrator who had tried to keep an experienced officer from helping during a staffing crisis. Andre called her only after both attorneys approved the contact. "You should not have to lose your position for preserving an order you were authorized to create," he said. "Neither should Luis," Robin answered. "They moved him to overnight property watch after he refused to change his account." Andre felt the old instinct to issue commands, move personnel, and shield both of them through rank. Administrative status left him no lawful power to do any of it. "Tell the investigator everything," he said. "I won't promise protection I cannot personally provide. I will make sure your retaliation claims are preserved beside mine." It was less comforting than a promise of rescue. It was also honest. Rourke responded before sunset. Through city council, she filed an ethics complaint accusing Andre of using a state grant review to collect restricted personnel records for a private grievance. She demanded that every staffing document be excluded from the investigation. The challenge had moved beyond whether Calloway heard dispatch. Rourke was now trying to make the evidence itself unlawful to possess. 6 weeks after the assault, Andre could lift his right hand to chest height, but not without a shaking effort. Physical therapy, turned simple movements into measurements. 3 inches higher, 5 seconds longer, 1 less grimace than the week before. The State Ethics Review dismissed Rourke's complaint. Andre had not ordered anyone to obtain her personnel records. The original staffing application had been collected during a review scheduled before the assault, and the preservation letter had been issued by counsel after he recused himself. Mason Ridge called the dismissal a technical decision. The independent investigation then examined the existing systems beyond the single rainy morning. The scheduling portal showed Rourke had used the emergency headquarters code to place Calloway in public contact assignments on 6 earlier shifts after Robin denied the waiver. None involved an evacuation, building threat, or mass arrest. Each assignment helped Mason Ridge report a fully staffed watch, while keeping Calloway officially categorized as restricted. The use of force system revealed a related pattern. Calloway had filed 2 force reports during those assignments. In both, the first version described a subject failing to follow directions. Later revisions added a movement toward the waistband after supervisors learned that available video did not capture the beginning of the contact. Those earlier cases did not prove Calloway lied about Andre. They did show that the expanding language in his report was a habit rather than an isolated effort to remember details. Rourke had digitally approved each final version. The camera controller audit added a narrower connection. Her account had entered privacy mode only during Andre's encounter, but the department tablet used for that command was assigned to her watch office. Device records showed it remained connected to the secure command network. They could not identify who held it. That gap became the center of the defense. Rourke signed a sworn declaration stating that the tablet had been left on a charging dock accessible to supervisors and technical staff. She said she went outside after dispatch called for a supervisor and never touched the device during the incident. Calloway declared that Andre had resisted before Luis arrived, causing the initial hood impact. He said his post-broadcast transmission was instinctive radio use and did not mean he understood the dispatcher's words through the rain. The investigators could prove that Rourke unlawfully assigned Calloway, amended the staffing record after the assault, approved his changing report, and owned the account used to stop the cameras. They still could not prove beyond dispute that she had personally issued the privacy command or that she and Calloway had coordinated their explanations. That was the missing Level 3 proof. Knowing participation, not merely access and benefit. The resisting referral against Andre closed for insufficient evidence. State professional standards found that he had complied with visible hands, requested verification, and invoked no authority beyond asking officers to confirm his identity. The superintendent ended his administrative status, though medical restrictions kept him from field command. The public correction received a fraction of the attention given to the edited lobby video. Calloway remained on paid leave under his union agreement. Robin remained suspended. Luis stayed on overnight property watch. Rourke returned to headquarters after city council said account ownership alone could not justify discipline. Andre met the superintendent in a quiet state office overlooking the Capitol parking lot. A written reinstatement order lay between them. "You can return to administrative command next month," the superintendent said. "But the city wants assurances that the staffing review will be reassigned and that you will stop making public statements while their process continues. The review is already reassigned. They mean the records." Andre understood the offer. He could recover his office, protect state relationships, and let the city reduce the incident to one disputed use of force. Robin and Luis would remain collateral damage. The scheduling loophole would survive under a different name. "I will follow medical restrictions and recusal rules," he said. "I will not agree that authenticated public records become private because they embarrass a department." The superintendent leaned back. "A civil case could keep this alive for years. It has already changed 3 careers and 1 shoulder. Quiet does not make it over." Andre authorized his attorney to file a federal civil rights action against Calloway and Mason Ridge. The complaint alleged excessive force, unlawful seizure, retaliation, and deliberate indifference in assigning a restricted officer to enforcement duties. City Council responded with a request to seal the staffing documents and bar Robin from testifying about the restricted duty system. The union sought separate protection for Calloway's disciplinary history. Both argued that Andre's rank gave him access no ordinary plaintiff could obtain. The judge allowed the lawsuit to proceed, but temporarily limited public release of the personnel material while confidentiality was litigated. The strongest proof of motive disappeared from public view. Then Mason Ridge released a new clip. It showed Andre, years earlier, telling academy recruits that officers who ignored lawful commands should be removed from service. The city presented the training speech as proof that he had entered the case determined to destroy Calloway. Andre watched his own words transformed into bias against the man who had injured him. Rourke no longer needed to erase evidence. She had learned that she could attack the reason anyone believed it. Discovery lasted 14 months. During that time, Andre learned that litigation could restrain a person without ever touching him. City attorneys demanded his command emails, medical history, academy lectures, and private messages with Ari. They argued that missing her exhibition had intensified his anger and encouraged him to exaggerate the injury. Ari sat for a deposition in a windowless office and answered questions about every promise her father had broken for work. "Did you resent him that night?" the city attorney asked. "Yes." "Then your photographs of his bruising were not neutral." "I was angry because he refused help. That does not change what was on his body." Andre listened from across the table, unable to protect her from a consequence his choices had helped create. Afterward, he apologized without explaining himself. Robin's suspension became a termination for unauthorized disclosure. Luis received a written reprimand for failing to assist Calloway during the detention, although investigators had found that obeying the stand-down order was proper. Calloway remained employed while the civil case proceeded. Rourke was transferred to an administrative post with the same salary. The city's insurer offered Andre a substantial settlement. It required confidentiality, dismissal of the claims against Rourke, and no admission concerning the restricted duty system. Robin and Luis would receive nothing. Andre's attorney reminded him that a jury could reject the entire case. The camera showed nothing. Calloway would say he perceived a weapon. Rourke would say she corrected an assignment error. Municipal liability required more than proving one officer behaved badly. Andre declined the offer. The decision delayed his eligibility for a permanent regional command appointment. State leadership would not say the lawsuit caused the delay, only that unresolved interagency conflict made the timing difficult. His shoulder improved enough for office work but never recovered its former strength. He could lift his hand above his head only after warming the joint, and cold rain still awakened the injured nerve. The defense attacked each record separately. The fleet alert measured force against the hood, but could not identify who caused it. The dispatch packet proved Calloway's radio transmitted after the order, but not what he understood. The camera log identified Rourke's account and tablet, but not the user's body. Report revisions showed changing language but allowed corrections. The staffing portal proved an improper assignment, but not an agreement to assault Andre. Separated, every source contained a reasonable doubt. Andre studied the records during rehabilitation, arranging printed summaries across Ari's dining table. She watched him move one page at a time with his recovering arm. "You keep trying to make one of them perfect," she said. "None of them is. Then stop presenting them one at a time." The answer was not a hidden recording or a new witness. It was sequence. The camera controller and staffing portal both recorded the department tablet identifier. The privacy command occurred while Rourke's authenticated session was active. That same uninterrupted session later submitted the amended staffing certification with her digital signature. Rourke admitted making the amendment, but denied issuing the earlier camera command. The continuous session could not exclude another person briefly taking the tablet. It did make the shared device explanation depend on someone using Rourke's active account to hide the cameras, returning the device, and leaving her unaware before she used the same session to revise the record protecting Calloway. Andre asked his attorney to stop arguing that any single log proved intent. Make them defend the whole sequence, he said. Impact, stand-down order, radio transmission, camera privacy command, supervisor arrival, trunk opening, report revisions, staffing amendment. Do not let them reset the story between systems. The physical reconstruction supplied the human center. A three-dimensional scan of the sedan's hood located the deepest deformation where Andre's upper chest had struck. The force direction aligned with his shoulder injury and Luis's description of Calloway driving him forward. The city's expert could still argue that Andre's resistance contributed, but not that the contact was a gentle escort. Before trial, the federal judge ruled that the original and amended staffing applications were admissible. They had been obtained through the pre-existing grant review, not through misuse of Andre's rank. Robin could explain the system and her own order. Calloway's prior cases would be limited, but his conditional employment agreement could be used to establish motive if he claimed he had nothing to lose. The ruling restored Robin's voice without restoring her job. It also meant the jury would finally hear why Calloway should never have been confronting citizens that morning. On the first morning of trial, Andre entered the federal courthouse in a dark suit. Ari walked beside him, carrying the exhibition catalog he had finally asked to see from beginning to end. The defense opened with the edited lobby clip. They froze the image on Andre's face and told the jury that a powerful colonel had converted a confusing security encounter into a campaign against a city officer. Calloway sat at the defense table with his hands folded. Rourke watched from the next row. When the clip ended, before dispatch spoke, Andre leaned toward his attorney. "Play it their way first," he whispered. "Then make them live through every second they removed." Tessa Ward testified first about the command path. The fleet desk had identified Andre's sedan. Mason Ridge's duty supervisor had confirmed his scheduled arrival, and Ward had transmitted the stand-down order under municipal authority. She did not claim the order required Calloway to release Andre without investigation. It required every officer to stop escalating until a supervisor took control. The jury heard Calloway's radio transmit after the broadcast. Luis then described Andre's open hands, Calloway's upward pressure on the arm, and the moment he obeyed dispatch, while Calloway continued. On cross-examination, Luis admitted he had not seen the first seconds of contact. "So Colonel Bennett could have reached before you looked over?" the defense attorney asked. "Something could have happened outside my view," Luis said. "What I saw was a man pinned with both palms visible." His refusal to overclaim made the answer stronger. The fleet custodian authenticated the impact alert and door history. The sedan registered a concentrated force against the hood before Calloway requested a supervisor. No passenger door opened. The trunk opened only after Rourke declared the scene controlled. The defense expert argued that Andre might have driven himself into the metal by resisting. Then the medical specialist and reconstruction analyst aligned the hood deformation with the direction of the shoulder tear. Resistance could contribute to an impact, they conceded, but the combined pattern matched an external forward drive, followed by the arm being forced upward. Calloway took the stand and repeated that Andre had moved toward his jacket. He said the force ended as soon as he understood dispatch. Andre's attorney displayed the report revisions. "When did a movement become a reach for a weapon?" "When I had time to remember the threat clearly." "And when did you remember the rear door?" "During the report process, after the city learned the camera had stopped." Calloway looked toward the judge. "I don't know the timing. The version history knew it for him." Robin explained the restricted duty order and Rourke's denied waiver request. She showed the jury how the emergency code bypassed real-time review and how its monthly audit allowed prohibited assignments to remain invisible long enough to support the staffing application. The defense accused Robin of revenge for losing her job. "I lost my job after preserving the record," she answered. "I wrote the restriction before Colonel Bennett ever came to Mason Ridge." Rourke testified that she amended the staffing certification to correct an administrative misunderstanding. She acknowledged using the department tablet to submit the amendment. She denied activating privacy mode and repeated that someone else could have used her authenticated session. Andre's attorney did not ask her to identify an imaginary culprit. Instead, she placed the systems on one screen and followed the sequence Andre had designed. The fleet impact appeared first. Dispatch verification followed. Calloway transmitted. The privacy command entered through Rourke's active session. Rourke walked outside and ordered radio silence. The trunk opened. Calloway's language expanded. Rourke's same tablet session submitted the amended assignment and later approved his final force report. "Did you report your tablet missing?" the attorney asked. "No." "Did you report unauthorized use of your account?" "Not until the vendor record was produced." "Did you identify any person who possessed the tablet between the privacy command and your amendment?" "No." Rourke still did not confess. She did not need to. Her explanation required the jury to believe an unknown employee had anticipated exactly which cameras needed to disappear, used her live session, returned the tablet, and left no concern until the audit exposed the command. Andre testified last. The defense walked him through his rank, his academy speech, and his decision to reject a confidential settlement. "You wanted Officer Calloway removed from service," the attorney said. "I wanted the evidence tested. You taught that officers who ignore orders should lose their jobs. I taught that lawful commands matter. That standard applied before I was the person on the hood." He described refusing the ambulance and admitted that his own choice worsened the injury. He did not assign that additional harm to Calloway. Ari lowered her eyes in the gallery, hearing him finally carry his share in public. After 6 days of testimony, the judge instructed the jury that rank granted Andre no special protection and deprived him of no ordinary constitutional protection. The jurors were not deciding criminal guilt. They were deciding whether the evidence, more likely than not, established unlawful force, seizure, retaliation, and municipal indifference. The verdict arrived the following afternoon. The jury found Calloway liable for excessive force and unlawful seizure. It found Mason Ridge liable for knowingly allowing a restricted officer into enforcement through an override system the city had been warned could fail. It also found Rourke's record changes and retaliation had contributed to the deprivation of Andre's rights. The courtroom remained controlled as the clerk read each finding. Andre felt Ari's fingers close around his left hand. The verdict did not restore his shoulder or return Robin's lost year. It did something narrower and necessary. It placed the complete sequence into a public record that no edited clip could replace. Outside the courtroom, the state prosecutor announced a separate review of the staffing amendment and camera command. Calloway's employment case and certification remained subject to their own hearings. Civil truth had arrived first. Legal accountability was only beginning. The civil judgment awarded Andre compensation for medical costs, lost professional opportunity, and the violation of his rights. The jury imposed additional damages against Calloway personally for continuing the restraint after the stand-down order. Mason Ridge initially announced an appeal, then withdrew it after the trial judge rejected the city's request to seal the system's timeline. The judgment became final without a confidentiality agreement. No institution moved as quickly as the verdict headlines suggested. Calloway's disciplinary hearing began 2 months later. His union presented the same defenses used at trial, but the employment panel applied department policy rather than the criminal standard. It found that he had initiated an unsupported detention, used force inconsistent with Andre's visible conduct, ignored dispatch, and submitted material report changes without a credible source. Mason Ridge terminated him under the conditional employment agreement. An arbitrator upheld the decision the following spring. The state certification board later revoked his license after a separate hearing. Prosecutors declined to charge him with assault because they could not eliminate every dispute about his perception during the first seconds of contact. They referred the false report evidence for administrative rather than criminal resolution. Rourke's case followed a different path. The state prosecutor could prove that she knowingly amended the staffing certification after the incident and falsely represented the change as pre-existing. The continuous tablet session supported the accusation that she had disabled the cameras, but it did not identify her physical possession beyond a reasonable doubt. She pleaded guilty to falsifying a public staffing record. The computer access count was dismissed as part of the plea, leaving the camera command formally unresolved in the criminal case. Rourke resigned, surrendered her supervisory certification, served probation, and was barred from managing public safety grants. The outcome was narrower than the civil finding, because the burden of proof was higher. Andre accepted that difference. Accountability did not require every forum to produce the same answer. The city's override system changed under a court-approved corrective agreement. Restricted duty profiles now blocked emergency assignments automatically unless both occupational risk and an uninvolved command officer approved the exception. Every privacy mode camera command generated an immediate notice to the Regional Communications Center and required a second credential to remain active beyond 60 seconds. Dispatch stand-down orders required each unit to acknowledge and a supervisor to document when physical control ended. The reforms did not depend on remembering Andre's rank. They applied to anyone placed against a hood, whether the person carried state credentials or no credentials at all. Robin's termination grievance ended with back pay, restoration of her personnel record, and reimbursement of legal fees. She chose not to return to Mason Ridge. Instead, she joined a regional risk consortium that audited restricted duty systems for small departments unable to build their own controls. Luis's reprimand was rescinded. He returned to patrol and later became an instructor for officers learning how to intervene when a colleague ignored a lawful command. Tessa Ward remained at the regional center and helped design the new acknowledgement procedure using the same kind of radio sequence that had preserved the truth. Andre's medical recovery never became perfect. After another year of therapy, he regained most of his range of motion, but his right hand weakened after long periods of writing, and cold weather sent burning pain from his shoulder to his last 2 fingers. The state cleared him for command with permanent physical limitations. He returned to his office without pretending nothing had changed. He delegated field demonstrations, accepted help fastening equipment when his shoulder stiffened, and stopped treating exhaustion as evidence of commitment. When younger commanders brought him problems, he asked what support they needed before asking what they had accomplished. Ari gave him another opportunity to practice that lesson. Her graduate exhibition opened on a Friday evening nearly 2 years after the assault. Andre arrived before the doors opened, turned off his phone, and stayed until the final guest left. One installation used overlapping lines of sound and light to show how a complete image could emerge from fragments that meant little alone. "Did the lawsuit inspire this?" he asked. "Partly," she said. "Mostly it was inspired by trying to talk to you." He laughed, then apologized for taking so long to listen. The damages paid for treatment and replaced the income delayed by the command appointment he had lost. Andre declined to campaign for a larger title. He remained a colonel and asked to oversee regional training, where he could change how officers understood authority before a street encounter tested them. His first redesigned exercise took place inside a plane training garage. A padded sedan stood beneath cameras that could not be disabled from the room. Recruits rotated through a confused vehicle contact, while dispatch introduced new information over their radios. The objective was not to identify the highest-ranking person. It was to recognize when certainty had exceeded evidence and when a lawful pause protected everyone. Andre watched from beside the control table. His shoulder ached, but he resisted the urge to take over when one recruit froze. Luis, now wearing an instructor's vest, waited long enough for the recruit to make a decision. The trainee kept pressure on the role player's arm after dispatch announced that the vehicle and driver had been verified. Luis stopped the exercise. "What does stand down mean?" he asked. The recruit released the padded arm. "Stop force. Create distance. Listen." Luis reset the scenario and handed control of the next round to a younger officer. Andre remained beside the table, not directing every movement, trusting the system and the people who had earned that trust. When the emergency tone sounded again, Luis gave the order, and every pair of hands came away from the hood.